So now it's time to start with the JavaScript part for the project, which is our cache calculator application. So for that, we need to use the script.js file. Now this file is already linked inside my index.html by using this particular line of the code. So make sure you link your script file, otherwise whatever you will write inside this script file, it's not going to reflect back inside this particular HTML file. So the first thing is we need to actually get the references of all of these particular HTML elements inside the variable. So before doing that, we need to listen to the document dot and we have to actually listen to the add event listener. So we are going to listen to the DOM content load listener, means the DOM content loaded, because whenever we update the value of the input type, we want to instantly listen to that particular event and then display the working of the logic inside this particular span element. Okay, so that is why we are actually going to use DOM content loaded event handler. Alright, and after that we need to add the callback here. So I'm going to use the arrow function and then providing the body of the function. And after that, whatever code we will write, everything will be present inside this particular DOM content loaded listener. Now instead of that, we need to create the references of the variable. So the reference of the variable is ET20,000, means the ET20,000. I'm going to name the variable name, not ET20,000. It's going to ET2000. Then we need to add here document.getElementById, and instead of that, we need to provide the ID name, which is already is like ET2000. Because the reason for doing this is actually so that I can easily add these ID names inside the script file. That is the reason I have specified this ET2000, ET500. And similarly, once we are going to fetch the IDs of this particular element, means we are going to initialize the ID to the variable inside the JavaScript. So that is the reason we are going to use this particular approach, which is like TXT500 and TXT200. So I'm going to just simply duplicate this line of code multiple times. And then I'm going to update the values here, which is like ET500. Then this is actually going to be ET200, which is for the 200 rupees note. Then this is 100. Then this one is 50. And it's going to like 20. Then we have 10. Then 5. Then we have 2. And then we have 1. I'm going to remove the last one. So total we have 10 currencies. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So these are the currencies that we will be used for the creation of the cache calculator application. Now I'm going to copy this and pasting it here because the variable name and the ID name is similar. So I'm going to copy and paste it by just duplicating it, means copy and pasting by using the double click of the mouse, which will be like easy for me and very quickly. So you can see now I have successfully able to initialize the IDs to the variables. Similarly, we need to get the reference of the other input elements, means the other elements, that is this particular span element. So for that, we need to here create the bunch of variables, which is like TXT2000, which is actually used to display the result. So document.getElementById, and inside of that, we need to provide the ID, which is TXT2000. If you come back to the index.html, you can see this particular span element has an ID TXT2000. Similarly, I'm going to duplicate this into multiple times and then I'm going to update the value. So it is like TXT500. Then this is going to like TXT200. This is like 100. This one is 50. Then we have this one is 20. Then we have 10 rupees note. Then we have 5. Then 2. And then in last we have 1. Now I'm going to copy, then the ID is going to be similar. Simply, you can just simply copy and paste it, which I'm doing here right now. Copy it and paste it, copy it. So I did it, copy it, and here I'm going to paste it, copy and paste it. Similarly, copy this particular one, here pasting it, and copy and paste it. You can see now I have initialized all the IDs. Okay, so we get the references of all these particular span elements and all of these particular input elements. Now the next step is we need to actually get the reference of these 3 elements also, which is the button, then the total cache and the total cache in words. So again, come back to here Here we need to add the const, and this is going to like txt final cache. It's going to equal to document dot get element by id, and instead of that we need to provide the cache, which is like txt final cache. Then we need to provide the here the port, which is for the txt final cache in words. So here we need to change the name of the variable, which is txt final cache in words, and then we need to check the id name also. So it is like txt final cache in words. So I'm going to paste the id name also. You can see this is the id name. Then at last we need to create the reserve variable for the btn, which is like btn reset, and just checking the id name, which is btn reset. So simply copy and paste the id name also here. So now the variable initialization part is done. It's time to create the actual logic, so which is the cache calculator logic. So here we need to create some bunch of arrays. So the first array is actually for the cache inputs, because we want to set the listeners to these particular ones, actually the input listener. So that is the reason we need to actually wrap this all inside the array, and by using the loop we can traverse it, because if we try to add the listener one by one, then it will become a time consuming task. So that is the reason what I am going to do. I am actually going to here use the cache inputs array is equal to, then we need to initialize this particular array. So the first is like 8200, means the 82,000. Then we need to add the 8500. Right, so this will be then 80. We need to add the 200, then 80, 100. Then again we need to use the 8050, then 80. Make sure to specify the comma 8020, and comma 80 over 10, then 5, not 80, it's like 5. Then you need to here specify the comma, and again comma 82, and then 81. Alright, so make sure we have 10 elements, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So perfect, we have 10 elements. Similarly, for these span elements, we also need to create the array. So like here we need to use the const, and this is actually for the cache text. Okay, so this is going to be cache text, which is the array name. Then we need to provide the bracket, then txt 2000, then txt 500, then txt, means we need to specify the comma txt 200, then comma txt 100, then comma txt 50, then txt 20, right, and then txt 10, and comma txt like our 5, then txt 2, then txt 1. Okay, so this for the text values. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have 10 values of the text values also, means the span elements. Then we need to set the listener to these input elements. So for that we need to use the cache inputs dot. So here I will be using the for each. Instead of that we need to provide the callbacks. So the first thing is we need to here provide the input, then specify the comma, then the index, and after that we need to here provide the arrow function, which is a callback, right, then to start the body. Alright, and instead of that we need to use the input, which is this particular input. Then we need to set the listener, which is add event listener, and here we need to actually listen to the input listener, and then specify the comma, and after that we need to again pass here arrow function. So here again the arrow function, make sure the arrow is also there, and then instead of that we need to provide the calculate cache function, which is the cache calculate function, and inside of that we need to pass the index value. Right, means whatever we will get the index here, we are actually passing it to this particular function. So we need to create this particular function. Alright, so for that we will here use the function keyword, then cache calculate function. So this function is going to accept a parameter. So make sure we need to specify the parameter to this function. So it is like index, right? So it is going to accept an index. Now first we need to create here an array, which is for the denomination of the cache. denominations of the cache. Here we need to add the variables. So we have total 10 cache currencies. This is the denomination, right? So we need to add this denomination. Then we have 2, then we have 1. So total we have 10 elements. 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have now perfectly 10 elements. And after that we need to create a row value. So you need to create the const, then row value is equal to, and then we need to provide the cache inputs, which is the array name, which is this particular one, cache inputs. And here inside of that we need to use the index, which is this index, whatever index that we will, suppose if we enter a value here, like in this particular one, so this actually a second index, because the index is started from 0. So this value of the index will be added here, like cache inputs 3. So actually we are going to denote this 8200 because it is actually a third index, which is actually a 2, because the index is started from 0. So this will be added here and inserted to this particular row value. All right. And after that we need to get the value, because the content that is present in this particular text view at this point of time, I have added a 5. So that 5 value will be replaced by this particular code. All right. And after that we need to multiply it with the denomination value, that is the values that we have created here. Now which value we want to multiply? So again we need to provide the index, that is this particular one, index. According to the index we want to multiply it with the denomination. So here the value is actually like 5 into like the value of the cache, which is 200. So it is going to like 5 into 2, which is like 1000, because we are actually adding here like 5 notes, which is the number of notes is 5 for the 200 rupees currency. So that is the reason it's going to display here 1000 as a result. All right. This logic will be working. If you try run it by yourself, then you will get the complete idea. All right. So this is the function that is used to calculate the cache. But before calculating, we need to actually set this row value to the text content of this span element, that is this particular one. So for that reason, we need to use here a cache text, because the cache text has all the array elements in which we want to display the result. This is actually denoting the span elements of the array. So cache text, according to the value of the index, we want to update the value. So here we are actually dealing with the third index, which is actually a value 2, because the index is started from 0. So we are actually dealing with this particular third value, which is the third row. So this value will be added here, means this particular txt200 will be selected. All right. And after that, we need to update its text content. So we need to use the text content function, which is the text content, means the text content property. We want to update the text content property. So we want to set it with the row value, and then we are going to use the toFixed, so that we doesn't get any float values, which is 0. Now if I control save it, and if I enter here a value, you can see now the result is instantly updated inside this particular span element. So now the logic is working perfectly fine. Now we need to actually display this particular result. Suppose if we inside this particular total cache, also if you enter the values in different elements, because this function will be quoted whenever there is a change appeared inside the DOM content loaded. So if I enter here like this value, then you can see the value is updated inside this particular row also. If I enter here value, then you can see it's also updated. If I enter here, then you can see, if I enter here, if I enter values, if I enter here, now you can see everything is updated value. Now the aggregate value means this sum of all of these particular values should be instantly updated to this total cache element, which is the element in which we are going to display the total cache. So for that we need to create the function. So it is actually a function. So here we want to create the function, which is total cache function, and then we need to here provide the values. So here we are going to use the let, which is the total cache function, or you can say that the total cache value. Now why we are using here a let? Because this particular variable value will be updated multiple times, and that value will be added to this particular total cache. So that is the reason we have used here a let. If we use the const, then we can't actually reinitialize this particular variable. So that is the reason we have used here a let. And after that we need to use the cache text, Now we can easily reference this cache text array directly inside this particular function because it is actually in the global scope. So that is the reason, because this is function is actually a part of this particular DOM module and everything is actually present inside this particular DOM module. So that is the reason we can take a reference directly to is inside of this particular function, because this cache text acts as a global to this all of the content of the code, means all of this function, right? So cache text, then we are actually here using the for each loop because we are going to check each of them. That is the reason we are going to use here a for each loop. Then here we need to provide the text inside of that, which is the text. Then we need to provide the callback, which is the arrow function, right? Then to start its block of the code. Instead of the cache text, we need to actually use the cache, which is the total cache value variable, which is this particular variable, total cache. Then I am actually using here the short syntaxing property, which is actually initializing the value and also adding it to the initialization. Then we need to use the parseInt function because the values that we will get from this particular span element, it's actually in a form of text. So that is the reason we need to use the parseInt function here. So parseInt, that is this one, and after that we need to get the value which is text dot text content, because we are actually getting the text value. So that is the reason we need to parse it to the integer. Alright, so this will be the value will be added to this total cache value. Now we need to set this total cache value because we are actually traversing it every time, and once we traverse it, then we want to update this particular value to this total cache variable, means this total cache element which is actually having a variable which is txt final cache. So we need to use this txt final cache here, txt final cache dot, and we need to update its text content, which is this text content is equal to, and here we need to craft the message which is total cache. Alright, and then we need to add here a plus sign which is total cache value. Control save it, and if I enter here value, you can see now the value is actually not updated. The reason for that, we need to actually call this function also. So to call this function, after calculating the cache, we need to call this particular function also here, like total cache. Alright, after calling this particular function, now the code is refreshed. If I enter here like 2, you can see instantly the value is also updated here. But there is a one problem inside this one. It's actually showing the 200 even if there is no values entered here. So if I refresh it and if I enter here like 2, then you can see inside of this particular 100 row, it's actually going to display the 200. So there is a problem inside of this particular one. So we need to actually look at this particular problem here. So maybe there is a initialization problem, like between, and there is a problem. You can see here the ID of this particular one is not changed here. So we need to actually copy this and paste it here. Control save it. Now you can see the code is refreshed. If I actually refresh one once more, then here I'm going to enter 5. Now you can see the values is perfectly updated. If I enter here like 20, you can see now the total cache is 20,000. If I enter here like 10, now you can see the total cache is 22,000. If I enter here like 3, 4, 3 like values randomly I am entering here, then you can see total cache is 22,610 rupees. Now we need to use the calculator so that we can check whether we are actually perfectly calculating the values or not. So the first value is 10,000. So I'm going to actually reduce some of the calculation. It's going to 2. It's going to 2 also, and this is also going to be 2, and this is also going to be 2. So that we need to actually perform less calculation. Alright. I'm going to clear everything. Then first value is 4,000. So plus, and then other value is like, so actually it is not working. Why? Actually I have used the calculator multiple times. Plus, then we need to add the 1000. Plus, then we need to add 400. Then 300. And then we need to add 150. And then we need to add 80. And then we need to add 40. Then we need to add 25. And then we need to add here like 10 plus 5, 15. So you can see it's actually displaying this 6010, and our value is also 6010. So our logic for calculating the total cache is also working. So the next step is we need to actually convert the entire total cache inside the words, like convert to word, which is the little more tricky part for this particular application, because we have to write a lot of code and we need to set up a lot of things, and I need to explain a lot of things also. So that will be covered in the next video. So that's it for this particular lecture. Thank you for watching. See you in the next lecture.